Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our VIP, very interesting podcast, where we host very interesting people. I'm Bobby Brown, and by my side is Chris Raymond.
Hello, everybody. On this podcast, we bring people with amazing life stories to share with us and our listeners.
On today's episode, we'll talk about immigration. Here in the studio, we have Mrs. Jong and her daughter Waverly Jong. They live in Chinatown in San Francisco.
They are here to listen and react to the stories of our three special guests, who are all immigrated to Israel.
Please welcome our first guest, Alina Blizhovsky.
Hello, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for this amazing opportunity.
And we are very happy to have you here. So now tell me, Alina, where did you immigrate from?
I immigrated from Ukraine to Israel when I was only 16 years old.
Oh wow, 16 is a very young age.
Oh, yes, I know. Luckily, I moved with my whole family, even my grandmother.
And still, I'm sure you had many difficulties. Can you tell us about them?
Yes, it's what I'm here for, isn't it? My biggest difficulty was my new school. Before I immigrated from Ukraine, I was a top student in my grade, but when I moved to Israel, I started to struggle. When I started school here, I was forced to go to the 11th grade, even though I was in my last year of high school in Ukraine. And still, I almost didn't manage to finish school successfully. I didn't leave my house and studied as hard as I could to succeed.
Wow, that is very inspiring. In my culture, education is very important. I come from China, where children were encouraged to study very hard. For me, immigrating to the USA was not easy. I am glad to hear that I am not alone to experience something like this.
I understand. Unfortunately, education wasn't my only difficulty. In Ukraine, my family hadn't been struggling financially. When we immigrated, although I didn't understand it at first, things changed. My parents' salary wasn't enough. I wanted to help and work after school. Thankfully, my mother did not allow me to do so. She said to me, "Children should study, not work. You will have time to work later. You have to study now."
Your mother is very smart. My family also had this struggle. I worked very hard for my children to have better opportunities than me. Even though we struggled with money, I made sure that my children would not notice that.
And she did an amazing job doing so. I had never noticed we had five-course meals every day.
That is a very emotional story. Thank you, Alina. I would like to welcome our next guest, Elina Cantro.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. I have never been on a podcast and I'm a little nervous, but I hope it will be okay.
It's okay, don't worry. I'm sure it will be fine. So, Elina, where did you emigrate from?
I immigrated to Israel from Belarus in 1991 when I was 17 years old.
Can you please tell us what was your biggest struggle when you first came to Israel?
Of course, when I first came to Israel, I hardly knew Hebrew at all. My family and I had to go to a place that teaches new immigrants how to speak Hebrew. It's called Ulpan. We went there every single morning. On our way to the Ulpan, people on the streets would yell racist slurs at us because we were immigrants from Russia. They made us feel like we don't belong here.
It is difficult to be different. When I wanted to participate in the local chess tournament, my mother disliked the idea at first. I think it's because there was no other Chinese like us. Maybe she was afraid that my opponents wouldn't be Chinese and they would be racist towards me. In the end, she agreed to let me participate. I had won the tournament and I got my first trophy.
Yeah, it's tough. There was another difficulty that I had been going through. In Belarus, my family had a beautiful, spacious house, but in Israel, we had to crowd 9 people into one small apartment that was our friend's apartment, who immigrated 2 years before us. We stayed there until we had enough money to rent our own apartment. Therefore, for a period of time, I studied Hebrew in the morning and then I had to go to work at the printing house until night.
I am so sorry to hear that. Hope you do better now.
Whoa, thank you, Elena. That was very interesting. For our last guest, we have Hannah Ben Bassat. How are you, Hannah?
I'm great. Thank you for having me today.
We are happy you're here. So tell us, when did you immigrate to Israel and from where?
I immigrated to Israel in 1948 when I was 6 years old from Sofia, Bulgaria.
Was there anything you struggled with after this big move and arriving in Israel?
Yes, of course, I had been mostly struggling with communications with others.
Where was this manifested at?
There was one funny story. We came to Israel when I was 6 years old and I went to a new school in Jaffa. Before my first day, my mother told me to enter the classroom and remember one word, Wednesday. All the way, I memorized the word Wednesday. When I arrived, they arranged us in rows in the yard according to classes, and me in a row of a second grade children. At the end of each line stood a teacher. Next to me was another row of children with a teacher who seemed nice to me. So, I decided to cross a line to be with the nice teacher. Because I only knew how to say Wednesday, I had no way to talk to the teacher and understand what to do. It later turned out to be a third grade row, and so I had skipped a grade without noticing.
But why did your mother tell you to remember the word Wednesday?
To this day, I still can't remember why.
That's funny. My mother also sometimes tells me things that I usually don't understand. When I was younger, my mother told me to bite back my tongue in order to get what I want. She started explaining why it's important and talked about strongest wind cannot be seen. But I didn't really understand. As I grew up and started playing chess, I now can understand that sometimes you need to be quiet to get what you want.
I am sure that her mother is right.
Thank you, Hannah, Waverly, and Mrs. Young. That was a great discussion to end our episode with. Thank you all for listening and sharing.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. See you next time in VIP.